Hello and welcome to Veterans, Our Frontline Heroes. I am your host, Irv Calloway. For the next 30 minutes, we'll be visiting with a gentleman from Lebanon Junction who was in the Navy doing WWII and assigned to the Merchant Marines. His name is Virgil Cothern, and he has an amazing story to share with us. So sit back and enjoy on Veterans, Our Frontline Heroes.
I'm Virgil Cothern from Lebanon Junction, Kentucky. I was born April 16, 1917, near Lebanon Junction. And I worked, before I went to the Navy, I worked for the L&M Railroad for several years. I worked on the bridges. We built bridges. I worked with what they call the Bridge and Building Department. Now, all my buddies had left. Everybody had got, I could get exempted if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. And all of our buddies had left. All the friends, people that I knew, even my cousins and everybody had gone overseas. And I decided that I had to go. There was no other way out of it. And I enlisted in the Navy January the 20th, 1943. And I went to Great Lakes, Illinois for my basic training up at the lakes. And I spent my basic training up there. And just about the time we got ready to leave from up there, a commander came around and he said, I want to tell you boys something. I've got a real good job for you if you're going to like it. Said, I'm going to tell you the good part first, and then I'm going to tell you the bad part. He said, I need a bunch of volunteers called the Naval Armed Guard. And said, you all will be on merchant ships. You'll go on these merchant ships, and you guard the cargo going into the troops overseas. And he said, you'll get good food. You'll have plenty to eat. You won't have to do nothing but just clean your quarters and clean your guns, take care of your guns. And so that's all you'll have to do, as long as you keep everything clean. You won't have no other work to do. But said, I'll tell you now the bad part. He said, when you start over there, you're going to have to fight your way all the way over. He said, you're going to be subject to daily attacks with submarines, and then when you get close enough, you'll be attacked by aircraft. Well, I found out when I got on the first ship, they sent me down to gunnery school at Gulfport, Mississippi, and after I got through with my gunnery training down there, sent me back to New York. And they put me on a ship. It was Lincoln Stephens, and they loaded up with bombs. They had a load of bombs going to the Air Force. And we had just got outside the 3-mile zone, I think what they call the 3-mile zone, when I saw my first ship go down. The first ship to hit was a tanker, a Free French tanker, and it blew up. And then I think they got, in that convoy, they got about 6 ships before we got to around North Africa. And then after that, we hauled bombs and ammunition over to Oran. We made, I don't know how many trips. I lost track of how many trips we crossed the Atlantic. But we had to fight for them submarines. I'd dodge them submarines all the time. And then when we got in the Mediterranean, then we'd get attacked by aircraft. And we went on this one load, this last load that I made across the Atlantic going to Oran. We pulled into Oran and we anchored out. We didn't go into the docks. And we sat around there for 2 or 3 days, and we kept wondering what was going to happen. And then they told us we was going to Italy. They was invading Italy. And we had a load of bombs we was going to take for the Air Force up there. And that night about, I guess it was just right after dark, we had a man on watch. We always called him the Mad Russian. He was a pretty wild little boy, and he got up there and he was on watch, and he said, he reported back there, the officer had me back setting time fuses on the 5-inch gun. I was setting the timers on there, you know, to make them explode, you know, when they got out, when they fired out there. And he said, there's planes approaching us that I think they're friendly planes, said they got their lights on. And he hadn't much more than got that out of his mouth. He said, friendly hell, said this is them are Krauts. And they started dropping bombs, they started dropping flares on us. And they lit us up, I mean, just like daylight. They dropped flares all over the convoy. And they was up in the dark, and we could hear them, but we couldn't see them. And I was on a 20 millimeter, and they strapped me in this 20 millimeter. You get strapped in so that you can lean back all the way back and shoot straight up, you know. And I was looking up. I think everybody else had about unloaded their guns at the sound. They were just shooting up there, hoping they'd hit something. But I had never opened fire yet, and I was laid back like that, and I looked and I saw this plane coming straight at me. And I opened up on him, and I caught him in the wing, and he blew up. And we found out later it was a suicide bomber. He was going to crash on a ship. That's why he was coming straight down at me. And when the explosion went in his wing, it knocked him over the side, and he went down by the side of the ship. And then the next day, we saw reconnaissance planes all over on the horizon. You could look over and see them just barely getting on the horizon a little bit. They was watching us. And so they slowed the convoy down. We was all around, and they wanted to stop at Algiers, slow down so they could get some more ships wanted to join us at Algiers. They was going into that invasion. And we was doing 2 knots. I mean, we were doing 8 knots, and we slowed down to 2 knots while them ships came in. And that, after it got dark that night, we saw them flares coming down ahead of us. We missed them. They come down, they dropped flares up everywhere trying to find us. But we got attacked just about all the way so we got into Naples, and then we got bombed after we got into Naples. And they had, at the same time, the Germans had bombed a hospital ship at Salerno, right down the coast from us. But they'd come in every night, they'd turn the lights on trying to unload the ship. And when they tried to unload it, a couple of 3 German planes would come over. We called them bed-check Charlies. About the time they thought we was going to bed, here they'd come, you know. And after we got through, we went back to the States. They told me over there at the time when this happened that I was going to receive a Bronze Star for shooting that plane down. And I'm still waiting for it. It's been 64 years and I haven't received it yet. And so we've come back to the States, and I changed ships. I got on the Stanton H. King, and we started hauling stuff over to England. On it, we were going to England hauling bombs and ammunition and different stuff. And so they sent us up to Gorrock, Scotland, and they equipped our ship with big booms on each side so we could pick LSTs up. We had 4 LSTs on each side, and then they put them tanks on them, you know, load the tanks in them. And we would go in, when the invasion of Normandy come, we went in just as close as we could get. And then we'd drop these LSTs down. The LSTs would go on in, you know, loaded with tanks. And I stayed on that. We made I think we made 6 trips across the English Channel, hauling them LSTs over there, you know. And well, I think a couple of loads we made trucks. We took a bunch of trucks over. But that's what we was doing then. And then after that was over, our ship got crippled. We had a crippled ship, and we had to come back to the States in a 2-knot convoy. We come all the way from England to New York and doing 2 knots. That's almost standing still. And then I I come home on leave for a little while, and I went back. When I went back, they sent me to up in Maine, up at Portland, Maine, to they had a new ship up there they just built. And I got in it, we came down to Baltimore, and we loaded poison gas and mustard gas and all kinds of gases on that ship had a load to take to Bombay, India. And we had to go alone. We couldn't have no escorts. We just had to take a chance on the subs and try to sneak that gas through. It was retaliation against the Japanese. In case the Japanese started using gas, well, they wanted gas over there, so they sent 2 shiploads. We had 1 ship with us, and we came back from India. We came back by South Africa, come around the Horn, went over to Brazil, and they loaded up a whole bunch of stuff on our ship, and we went up to Rio de Janeiro, and then I had, after we got we was about 3 days out of Rio is when they dropped the atomic bomb, and the war had ended. But we was carrying 18,000 tons of bombs when they attacked us, and it was just a pretty scary trip, you know, all the time. But we was attacked all the time. You had to be on the alert all the time. But them subs, them old U-boats was out there all the time. And then I came on back, we finally come back to New York, and then I got discharged, come home, got discharged. And I met my wife, met her the first night and fell in love with her. And about 2 or 3 months we got married, and we've been living together for 62 years.
Stay tuned as Virgil Cothern shares more of his amazing stories while serving in the Navy in WWII, right after this short break.
I had the great pleasure of being a part of Troop 30.
Pack 273.
Troop 89.
Scout is trustworthy,
knowing
loyal.
what the Scout law means.
567.
I'm with Crew 12.
Yeah, I'm not on the camera right now.
Here's the boat.
Just getting to cook over an open fire.
And here's the house.
Rappelling.
Let's go.
Capture the flag.
The importance of being honest.
Loyal to your country.
Good citizenship.
To your family.
Be a scout for the rest of my life.
I'm Pat Forty from ESPN.com with my buddy Rick Bozich of the Courier-Journal. And if you like to discuss and debate sports as much as we do, your life is pathetically incomplete unless you're watching our show, Page One Sports, on ICN Channel 2, Tuesdays at 9 o'clock.
And we know you're not pathetic. We know you have ideas, and we want to hear them. We've got a Twitter account, Page One Sports at Twitter.com. Send us your topics and your ideas.
Brought to you in part by Sam Swope. Nobody walks away because everybody saves.
Welcome back to Veterans, Our Frontline Heroes. I am your host, Irv Calloway. We have been listening to Virgil Cothern sharing with us some of his amazing stories and experiences while serving in the Navy in WWII, assigned to the Merchant Marines. He's got some interesting stories yet to tell, so sit back and enjoy on Veterans, Our Frontline Heroes.
At all them trips across the Atlantic, every one of them was, I never did know us loading anything but ammunition. We always had ammunition, or bombs or artillery shells. If they run out, if they got low on them over there, sometimes we'd have to go by ourselves. We couldn't go wouldn't have no escorts, you know. Sometimes we'd have destroyers escorting us, and they could detect submarines. They had what they call, back then they called it sonar or something that they used, and they could tell when subs was in the vicinity, you know. But if we was alone, we couldn't tell at all. We just had to just hope one of them didn't see us. And I lost track of how many trips we made across the Atlantic. I made a lot of trips over there. That was the worst air attack that we had. There, the planes were everywhere. All the sky was full of them. And all the boys, I think most of them on there, unloaded their guns at the sound. They heard them up there, and they just shoot up there hoping they'd hit something. And I was lucky. I held my fire, and I waited, and if I hadn't, we'd have been gone. As I saw that plane coming, and just the second that I saw him coming, I pulled the trigger, and we had shells in that thing. We had the armor piercing, tracer was the next, incendiary shell, and then the high explosive. And that incendiary shell is what set him on fire and blew they carried the gasoline, and they called them Stuka dive bombers. And they carried that gas in the wings. The scariest trip we made, though, was hauling that gas. We had poison gas and mustard gas. We unloaded at Bombay, India, and that to retaliate with. They had one of those ships blowed up one time with that gas on it, and the Armed Guard was on there. They just wrote a book about the Armed Guard. I just got a copy of it the other day. It tells about the outfit I was with, you know, and it told about the hazardous trips that we made. There was one trip, a real bad one was Murmansk, Russia. That was one of the hottest spots there is. It in the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean was hot. See, France, Germany was occupying southern France, and you could see southern France when you went through the Mediterranean. You could see southern France on one side and North Africa on the other. And them planes, when they tried to stop, that was the only route through to Italy and India. That's the only way we had to go in by ship, you know, up that way. And that's why they fought so hard to try to keep us from going through there. Every time that you got in that Mediterranean, you was going to get attacked. And they had subs and the planes both. And them planes, they carried these torpedo bombs, well, you know, torpedo planes. And they'd fly low on the water, and then they drop that torpedo, just like for a sub, you know, like a submarine did. Only they was flying across to us. It was pretty rough going. But I wouldn't have took nothing for the Navy. I loved the Navy. I wouldn't take nothing from my experiences I had all the time that I was in there. I don't care how scary it got or nothing, I loved that Navy. I used to want to join the Navy when I was a little boy, but I wasn't old enough to get in there. And my mother, after I did get up the age, you know, where they would take me, she wouldn't sign for me. I couldn't get her to sign for me to go in. But after the war started, then I couldn't stand it any longer. I had all my buddies was gone. Everybody I knowed almost was over there. And I said, I've got to go. So I went with them. Well, the war we fought in, World War II, that was a necessity. If we hadn't went over there and fought them, they would have been over here. And if you could just take over and take a look at it, go in some of them cities after they get through, and you'll understand why we wanted to fight them over there instead of over here, because it was something awful. At Naples, Italy, we went in there and unloaded a load of bombs for the Air Force. And that place had just been blown all to pieces. The Germans bombed it, the Americans bombed it, and then the Germans bombed it again. They just back and forth. They was caught right in the middle. See, after Germany was occupying it, the Americans bombed it. Then they run the Germans out, and then the Germans bombed it because the Americans was occupying it. And them people's really catching it. I remember them little children. What got me the most was them little children over there. I see them eating out of garbage cans. You know, their parents killed in these old bombed out buildings. I always remember the little girl. She looked like she was about 3 or 4 years old. And they give us chocolate bars. We always got, they give you a lot of strength, and everybody always got them chocolate bars. I'd always save them back. I wouldn't eat them, I'd save them back for them kids. And I always remember that little girl I'd give them to those chocolate bars every time I'd see her when I'd go ashore. And so we had a bad raid that night. They bombed all over the place that night. And I never did see her anymore. I guess she got killed, you know, in that raid. But I'd always save them, my chocolate bars for them little kids, because it was real pitiful. They didn't have no parents or nobody.